It's here. The end. Halloween ends, that is. Everyone is entitled to one good scare, and few movies have managed to strike fear into the hearts of audience members as effectively as Halloween. But the franchise has not come without its trials and tribulations. And with David Gordon Green's trilogy brought to a conclusion with the release of Halloween Ends on October 14th, 2022, there is no better time for an in-depth analysis of this franchise's ups, downs, twists, turns, triumphs, and failures. Stay with us as we explore the manner in which the horror unfolds and takes on a new shape. Hailed as the godfather of slasher films, the original Halloween was born from the genius of John Carpenter. From there, it transformed into one of the most horrifically entertaining and lucrative horror franchises to date. So how and when did the terror begin exactly? Released in 1978, the movie Halloween began with the brutal stabbing of Judith Myers by her 6-year-old brother on Halloween night in the year 1963. Dressed in a clown costume, young Myers emerged from his home carrying a bloody butcher knife, the very knife he just used to violently murder his sister, an image that could be perceived as a visually conceptual juxtaposition of innocence and evil. Theories abound regarding the reasoning behind Michael Myers' actions that night. Perhaps he was angry that his sister, who was supposed to be babysitting him, opted to have sex with her boyfriend rather than take him trick-or-treating. Or perhaps, as Dr. Loomis suspected after looking into Michael's blackest eyes, the young killer was in all actuality the devil incarnate. Either way, the result was Michael Myers getting locked away in a mental institution for 15 years. Then one fateful night, he escaped Smith's Grove Sanitarium and left a trail of bodies in his wake. One of Michael Myers' less notable but ultimately significant kills was that of a mechanic. The mechanic's overalls became Michael's favored piece of clothing, somehow standing the test of time. Upon reaching Haddonfield, Michael held up in his old house, which had grown into legend over time and in fact served as a source of scares for the local children.
You're not supposed to go up there.
Yes, I am.
That's spook house.
It is at this house where he first spotted Laurie Strode, played by none other than Jamie Lee Curtis. For the rest of the day, Michael stalked and terrorized the pretty young teenager, until such time that night arrived and the monster kicked into high gear. Michael set out on a killing spree that resulted in the deaths of Laurie's friends, Annie and Linda, as well as Linda's boyfriend, Bob, and 2 dogs, one of which Michael ate for sustenance. Michael then turned his sights back to Laurie, who happened to be babysitting little Tommy Doyle at the time. And the final showdown between the smart girl and the shape became a holiday classic. While all this is happening, Dr. Loomis, an integral part of the film, is trying to search for and warn Sheriff Brackett about Michael Myers.
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
Loomis, played by acting great Donald Pleasance, came to Strode's rescue at exactly the right time. However, the boogeyman somehow vanished into thin air, evading justice in the end. One of the notable aspects of Halloween was that it was created on a skeletal budget of $320,000, yet became the most profitable independent film all the way up until the Blair Witch Project of 1999. Director John Carpenter was a young filmmaker when he undertook the original endeavor. Other than a few shorts, which he created in the 1960s, Carpenter only had Dark Star, released in 1974, and Assault on Precinct 13, released in 1976, under his belt. It was because of this greenness that Carpenter felt intimidated when Donald Pleasance, a highly respected actor, signed on to the project.
Donald accepted the part. My most frightening moment as a director was the first time I had to go meet Donald. Years later, I became very close with Donald. He became a very dear, dear, dear friend. But at the time, I was scared to death of him. So he said, I don't know why I'm doing this film. I don't know what my character is all about. The only reason I'm here is because my daughter, who's a rock and roll guitar player, thought that the music you did in Assault on Precinct 13 was good, so I don't know what I'm doing.
There are parts of the script which I'm now doing for John, which I can't accept, but I have to bring myself round to seeing it in his way because it's his film.
I realized that he was just testing me.
I think it's a little melodramatic, and certainly in my role. He got hungry.
Could have been a skunk.
Could have.
Man wouldn't do that.
This isn't a man. But of course, it's not intended to be real in that awful word realistic sense.
He always wanted to test the director to see, what did you have in mind for him? Did you have passion for the role? What was going on? But oh, my heart was pounding.
Due to the budget limitations and other factors, the vast majority of the actors employed for the film were relatively unknowns at the time, including lead Jamie Lee Curtis, who found favor for the part on account of her family ties. Jamie Lee Curtis's mother, Janet Leigh, played Marion Crane, a young woman violently stabbed in the infamous shower scene in the classic Hitchcock movie Psycho. Playing Laurie Strode's friends were Nancy Kyes as Annie and P.J. Soles as Linda. P.J. Soles caught Carpenter's eye after she played Norma in the movie Carrie, which was based off the Stephen King novel and directed by Brian De Palma. The character of Michael Myers was inspired by the unstoppable killing robot in Westworld, while the role itself was fulfilled by 4 different actors: Will Sandon as 6-year-old Michael, and Nick Castle, Tommy Lee Wallace, and Tony Moran playing the Shape as an adult. Castle was the primary actor in the role. However, it was Tommy Lee Wallace who attacked Laurie Strode in the infamous closet scene, and Tony Moran as Michael Unmasked. Unlike some of the other films in the franchise, what made Halloween 1978 so special, what set it apart from the rest, was that it did not rely on blood, gore, or shock value, but suspense for its success.
The film I'm making now, Halloween, hopefully will be is a horror film, loaded with scares, suspense scares, hopefully not grisly or gory, but suspenseful, making people on the edge of their seats. I enjoy doing that.
John Carpenter not only co-wrote and directed the film, but also created the iconic score, one that has since become synonymous with terror.
During the shoot, John Carpenter was also busy working on another ingredient, the music score, which the keyboard-playing director composed himself.
I had 3 days to do the score, and my father bought me a pair of bongos, believe it or not, when I was a teenager, which I never particularly learned how to play, but he taught me 5/4 time on them. 5/4 time, it became the Halloween. That's all that is. Da 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 da. It worked. So I just did it on the piano, octaves, and put some synth strings and so forth on it.
The movie's positive reception led to a call for sequels. So in 1981, the second installment in the series, entitled Halloween 2, was released. It too was written by writing team John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. However, Carpenter later expressed regret about the project.
There are 2 sides to one when you work in the movie business. One is as an artist, or you think of yourself as a creative person, and the other side is a business person. I let my producer side come out when they offered me the sequels to Halloween. They offered a nice sum of money, and I also had a lot of hope for giving new directors a chance to make films as I had been given a chance with low-budget films. And the directors who did 2 and 3, Rick Rosenthal and Tommy Wallace, were what they were given was a budget, and in some cases a script, and okay, here are the rules of the game, make your movie. Nobody's going to bother you. It doesn't always work. I thought Halloween 3 was excellent. I really like that film because it's different. It has a real nice feel to it. I think he's a talented director. On the other hand, I think Halloween 2 is an abomination and a horrible movie. I was really disappointed in it. But I don't think the director has gone on and done some other films. I think his career is launched now. But I don't think he had a feel for the material. I think that's the problem. He didn't have a feeling for what was going on.
And that is vital.
Oh, yeah.
Taking place on the same night as the original, Halloween 2 offered audiences the return of the stars from the first film and basically followed character Laurie Strode to the hospital where she needed to recover from the wounds she had received at the hands of Michael earlier that evening. Hearing Laurie's location on the radio, Michael Myers immediately set off to finish what he started, forcing Laurie and Dr. Loomis to fight evil incarnate for a second round.
It's time, Michael.
Unlike its predecessor, however, Halloween 2 was not directed by Carpenter, but by Rick Rosenthal.
My first goal was to make it feel as much like the first one as possible, which meant very similar lighting and camera movement. And I really had watched that film a bunch of times, and there was a very fluid camera, and it was the early days of Steadicam, which was in those days called the Panaglide.
We knew we were going to be shooting, the majority of the film in a hospital setting. Working in a real hospital was, sort of out of the question. So we needed to find a location that looked like a hospital. The production designer began looking around and found what was essentially a unused little hospital in Pasadena.
That turned out to be the most difficult location because when we scouted it, I was very aware of the proximity of the airport. It seemed like there was a plane every 12 minutes. And I said to the location guy, what's the deal here? I'm hearing a plane every 12 minutes. And he said, no, that's the bad weather pattern. It's much better than that. Well, it turned out that was a good weather pattern. And the bad weather pattern, the planes would be stacked up, and sometimes you would go for 15 minutes without a break. They would just fly in one after another. And we had actually, at some point, we had to put somebody on the roof to be able to walkie-talkie us in when there was a gap, just long enough to try to get a scene in. And it was really hard on the actors because they just get into a scene and then this big 747.
With Michael carving up a larger kill count, the franchise took a gorier approach to the murders. And an unexpected plot twist was added to the delight, or perhaps displeasure, of viewers. It turned out that Laurie wasn't just another babysitter in Haddonfield, but the sister of Michael Myers himself.
That girl, that Strode girl, that's Michael Myers' sister.
Another new addition to Halloween came in the form of Dick Warlock as the Shape. Although Warlock expressed pride in his performance, writer Deborah Hill had something else to say on the matter.
There was something about the way he moved, that he glided as Michael Myers.
I hadn't seen the first Halloween when I got the job for the 2. Knew a little bit about the character because of what Deborah had said. So I thought, well, I better watch this. So I watched this, and I really, in all honesty, with all due respect to the guys that did it, and I understand there were 5 different people did it in the first movie. So with all due respect to Nick Castle, I couldn't put it together, what the character should be like. It seemed like when I put the mask on, I went, I would breathe underneath there. I felt it. I really felt it when I put it on and did it. Rick let me just do what I wanted to do. He would tell me, you're going from point A to point B, but he never told me how to do it. And I understand that I got knocked by Deborah on one of the anniversary editions for never getting the walk down. Well, she was on the set every day and never said a word to me about, I think you're walking too slow, or you should do this or that. And the same thing with Rick. Rick never said, hey, a little faster, a little more energy, a little this. So I thought, well, they like what I'm doing.
Infused into the horror mix was a love story between Laurie Strode and hospital worker Jimmy, played by Lance Guest. Jimmy almost instantly took an intimate interest in Strode, but in the end failed to be the hero to her damsel in distress. That role was squarely and securely reserved by none other than Dr. Loomis. Although the film did well at the box office, popular critics like Roger Ebert took some deep stabs at it by stating, "It's a little sad to witness a fall from greatness," and that's what we get in Halloween 2. Ebert went on to say that the film lacked imagination and artistry, with mutilation replacing what made the first version so special, that being suspense. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch came next, and Ebert was equally unimpressed, calling the flick a low-rent thriller from the first frame. Released in 1982, this third edition attempted to capitalize on the magic of the original, yet took a whole new approach to the holiday horror. Written and directed by Tommy Lee Wallace with uncredited assistance from John Carpenter and Nigel Neal, Halloween 3 abandoned Michael Myers in favor of a new villain, the owner of the Silver Shamrock Novelties Company, Conal Cochran.
The Festival of Samhain. The last great one took place 3,000 years ago and the hills ran red.
In the film, the evil costume maker fiendishly endeavored to sacrifice children through a mixture of witchcraft and technology as part of a centuries-old pagan ritual. Recognized as one of the biggest issues plaguing the film was its departure from the lack of continuity with the rest of the franchise. The only connection between Halloween 3 and the other two films was the holiday itself, and maybe the return of Dick Warlock, who doffed his Myers mask for an android thug costume.
The decision not to use the Michael Myers character was stupid, and why they decided to leave that, I do not know.
No, I can't prove it. You've got to believe me. Believe me. Take it off the air now, please.
There was a horrible backlash. It was crushing for me because, it was perceived as a flop.
Dark masks, gather round your TV set. Put on your masks and watch.
If it hadn't been called Halloween 3, if it was just called Season of the Witch or some other title, it may have gotten a better reception.
Take off the third channel. The third channel. It's still running. Stop it, please. For God's sake, please stop it. There's no more time.
When I saw it, I thought, well, this is a terrific little scary movie in the tradition.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!
But it died a terrible death. It did not. And I've done a number of films like that.
Stop it!
As explained by director Wallace, the decision to go in a different direction than Michael Myers was not arbitrary, but purposeful, and based on what could have been a lucrative idea if the execution and reception had turned out as planned.
Our thinking makes great sense and is a real money-making idea that everybody somehow just managed to drop the ball, including Universal Studios. And that is this: each year, let's come out with a new movie on the subject of Halloween, All Hallows Eve, and all that goes with it. It could go in any direction it wants, and each one can spin off any number of their own sequels. Now, tell me, is that not a great, fertile idea that could make money for the rest of time?
Unfortunately for its creators, the flick did not meet expectations, so the new horror storyline per year was ditched in favor of Michael Myers returning in Halloween 4.
Now, Michael Myers has come home. He has returned for one more night of unholy terror.
Michael!
Somebody help me!
He's here to kill that little girl and anybody who gets in his way.
Oh, God!
Who's gonna be next?
Screenplay writer Alan B. McElroy took on the project and quickly set out to explain what happened to the characters at the end of Halloween 2. However, a higher-up decision was made to reference only the first film, since it was where many perceived most of the magic lied. Still, an important storyline from the second movie somehow managed to find its way into the fourth edition, when the security guard at the insane asylum remarked about Myers' sister, none other than Laurie Strode.
Just thinking about him gives me the willies. A decade ago, Halloween night, he murdered 16 people, maybe more, trying to get to his sister.
Directed by Dwight H. Little, Halloween 4 was released in 1988 and introduced popular newcomer Danielle Harris as Jamie Lloyd to the big screen.
We went all the way to New York City to find Danielle Harris.
I literally just went on an audition and walked in and read for casting, and I think I had to cry in a scene. It was like scream for me, cry for me, and read the scenes.
And when she came in, she just captivated the room. She was young, but also very precocious. She was very poised, she was very mature. And we felt that with all the things that we were going to be asking of this young actor, that she was going to be able to handle it without being in any way adversely affected by it. And she just had the confidence as a kid to do it.
I was so excited to be making a movie because it was my first movie, and they treated me like I was a little adult. I mean, there really was no like, oh, she's a kid, you need to, treat her like a kid. I mean, even the stuff that we did, like the stunts and just sort of the emotional stuff, I was very much a little 40-year-old trapped in this like little shrimp of a body. But I was only allowed to see the first one, so I hadn't seen any of the other ones till I actually got much older.
We really made sure that she was cared for and knew what she was doing, but at the same time, wasn't exposed to a lot of violence or anything like that.
Everybody on set, actually all the special effects guys, like we would be in the trailer and they would be showing me how things were done, and so I think they wanted to make sure that I wasn't too traumatized as a child to the best that they possibly could, and it didn't really bother me.
In a nutshell, the story takes place 10 years after Michael Myers went on his babysitter killing spree in Haddonfield. Michael spent those years in a coma, simply waiting for the right time for his evil to awaken, which occurred when the news of his niece crossed his blood-brained barrier and hurled him straight back into monster mode. Escaping the maximum security lockdown facility, Michael then made his way back to his hometown, where he tracked down and stalked his niece, spreading horror and blood yet again on Halloween night. As usual in these films, Dr. Loomis stepped in to employ every tool in his wicked battling arsenal in order to stop the devil. There was a twist ending in this particular sequel, however, that not only surprised but delighted audiences worldwide and created a proverbial bloody stir.
The transfer from Michael to Jamie through the hand was very carefully thought out, and that she was going to then, the twist ending was going to be she had been, in a sense, possessed by Michael's spirit through the bloodline, and would come back at the epilogue of the movie.
And to have that shock moment of him turning that corner and seeing her at the top of the stairs standing there with the, with the scissors.
No! No!
This harkens right back to the first film, right back to Michael standing outside. I wanted that exact tie-in, so it's like, it's starting again.
It was, as we all know, something that people have talked about. It was kind of one of the highlights of the movie.
My double actually did the stabbing. They didn't want me to do it, which is interesting considering that the whole movie I'm being chased by somebody with a large knife trying to kill me.
That's why the twist at the end is so overwhelming, is because you just don't expect this girl to be possessed by Michael's devil spirit, and it's why it's so shocking.
And that famous, no of Loomis coming around this, I still get the chills thinking about it, so it's a pretty rad ending of the movie.
Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, breathed new life into the franchise, which undoubtedly led to yet another in the succession being greenlit. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, released in theaters in 1989, only 1 year after the fourth installment. Several actors from the previous film returned for this sequel, including Danielle Harris, who played now-mute Jamie Lloyd. The film once again revolved around Myers, who somehow managed to survive being shot repeatedly by the police, being dead set on killing his young niece. This time around, however, there existed a psychotic connection linking Lloyd to her maniacal uncle, adding an extra dose of horrifying excitement and titillation. The making of the film was not smooth sailing, especially given the underdeveloped Man in Black character, causing confusion on set with regard to purpose, and actor Donald Pleasance accidentally breaking the shape Don Shank's nose. Many felt this slasher was rushed into production with a budget of $5 million. One complaint was that the flick was too heavily rooted in blood, gore, and violence, rather than a carefully crafted storyline. Dissatisfied viewers also noted that the movie relied too much on the fans' love for the franchise, and thus failed to stand on its own. Despite the efforts of the cast and crew, the movie did not appease its audience in the way the previous installment had, and as a result did poorly at the box office. Though it developed a cult following over time, some critics have slapped it with the label of worst in the lot.
I think 5 dissipated the interest level of the really diehard fans. That's why it didn't do as well as at the box office. And I know, for some reason, 12 minutes into the film, audiences were seen like running for the exits. So I don't know.
There were certain things that just didn't seem to jive, and certain things that they didn't seem to take care of.
It seemed like in the rush to get it done, maybe there was a lot of cooks in the kitchen, but it's definitely a unique film amongst the series. It's got its own look and style and feel.
The opportunity to do this film with so many creative people in one place really benefited the film. If it was a standalone project, I think it would have done very well.
I think it's still some of the best work I've done as an actor. The movie's a good movie outside of it being a sequel to Halloween 4. I mean, if you just watched it outside and it wasn't Michael Myers, I think that it is a good movie.
People are still watching it and still having a great time. Whether they love it or they hate it, they still watch it. So it's doing something for people.
Despite its negative reception, this particular entry has gone on to be referred as the Giallo movie of the Halloween franchise due to the European aesthetic and uncanny Italian resemblance of the Man in Black. Examples of Giallo movies with horror elements and a similar feel drawing this comparison include Deep Red, Tenebrae, and Opera. Whatever the public's opinion, it would take another 6 years before The Shape returned to theaters, this time in Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, released in 1995. Reprising his role as Dr. Loomis for the final time, star Donald Pleasance passed in the same year as the movie's release, breaking the hearts of many die-hard Halloween fans and ending the actor's unique portrayal of and vision for this iconic character. Pleasance was also well known for his roles as the forger in The Great Escape, the villain with good taste Blofeld in the Bond movie You Only Live Twice, one of the 3 kings who visited baby Jesus and offered warning to Mary and Joseph in the religious film Jesus of Nazareth. Then newcomer Paul Rudd played Tommy Doyle and Joe Chappelle directed the film, which ran an hour and 36 minutes and started with Jamie Lloyd giving birth. Lloyd then hid the baby before Michael Myers ended her life. Lloyd's death was portrayed in 2 ways, depending on theatrical or the producer's cut. Either way, Tommy Doyle took on the difficult role as the baby's protector, which once again placed him squarely against his childhood nightmare, the Boogeyman. In this installment, the Cult of Thorn was explored as one of the major plot points. The Cult of Thorns served as the source of Michael Myers' curse, as well as safeguarded him to the extent possible.
The whole thing with the runes and the ancient brotherhood who's keeping Michael alive to do their dirt, that was kind of fun.
We thought we were really going to be working on just an amazing sequel.
Now with Michael and telling basically his origin, when you start to do that, you begin to sympathize with the character and you're not as afraid. Dan Ferens did a great job in controlling it and not getting it blatantly in your face, just sort of letting you follow the clues and allowing the story to unfold. And I think that in and of itself made it a little bit more interesting and not just another Halloween film. And that's what really drew me to the project.
While the origin story took the franchise in a new direction, its reception at the box office was lukewarm at best, so the film did not do as well as hoped. Many fans were also ignited and displeased by the fact that J.C. Brandy replaced Danielle Harris in the role of Jamie Lloyd.
So they sent out this breakdown for Jamie, and they wanted someone over 18 to play, 17, and they had my picture, my headshot that they wanted to look alike. So my agent called me and said, they're casting Halloween 6 and they're trying to get someone over 18 to play your character. Obviously, when you're over 18, you can work longer hours, you could do other things, I don't have to go to school. I was 17 though. So my agent called up Paul Freeman and Mustafa and said, Danielle wants to do this and what can we do to make it happen? And they said, we need to hire someone over 18, so get her emancipated. So I go, finish, sit down, have a meeting with everybody, and I remember everything starting to change. Like the way that everybody was talking about the new script and things that were, it just wasn't, I remember leaving thinking, oh, these people don't know Halloween. Like, this isn't, I don't get it. This isn't, wait, I'm confused. So I am pregnant with my uncle's baby? Like, I just didn't understand what had shifted. We went back and forth quite a bit, and it just was like, just wasn't working from the very beginning. And then business affairs, which is, you know, people that are supposed to make the deal with actors. They don't have any connection to the project. It's just their job. And they called, and I just remember being on the phone and them being like, we're gonna offer you, you know, whatever scale it was, like $800 a week or $1,000, 1 week of work for the week. And I was like, oh my God, I have all of this, I just paid like $3,000 or $4,000 to be able to do the movie. And wait, what? I remember Paul getting on the phone with me and somebody else, maybe it was Dan Ferens, and them sort of saying, please, 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 you know, we're gonna make this work, we're gonna make this right, and just feeling like their hands were tied. And I tried to make it happen, and then we had one more phone call, and I'll never forget, the woman on the other line said to me, your character is a scale character. You die in the first act. We're not giving you any more money.
Like its predecessor, The Revenge of Michael Myers, the sixth installment of the Halloween franchise gained a cult following over time. And lead Paul Rudd went on to play in such successes as Clueless, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Anchorman, Ant-Man, and The Avengers. Thanks to Shout Factory, the legendary producer's cut was finally unearthed and released after 19 years. It went on to be considered the holy grail of home video releases for Halloween fans. Moreover, it sparked the creation of other definitive cuts of the two versions, like my own Blue Myers cut, a hybrid that provides an alternative with carefully selected character beats and development to appease die-hard viewers and correct problematic choices and transitions. 3 years later, a full 20 years after the original, Halloween H2O hit the big screen in 1998 with Jamie Lee Curtis reprising the role of Laurie Strode. Josh Hartnett of 30 Days of Night, The Faculty, and Penny Dreadful played Strode's son, John Tate. Emmy winner and Academy Award nominee Michelle Williams of Manchester by the Sea and Brokeback Mountain played Tate's girlfriend, Molly Cartwell. And Chris Duran from the horror movie Scream took on the role as Michael Myers, as known as The Shape. Jamie Lee Curtis's mother, Janet Leigh, best known for her iconic part in the movie Psycho, also graced viewers with a cameo performance in this highly anticipated film. Ignoring the others in the franchise, save the first two, the movie picked up 20 years after Laurie's encounter with Michael Myers at the hospital. H2O presented a fresh start, with Strode having faked her own death and taken on the identity of Carrie Tate to build a new life for herself as dean of a private school, the same school her son attended. Plagued by fear of Michael Myers' reemergence, Strode battled emotional demons every Halloween by hitting the bottle and shifting to overprotective mode. It turned out that Strode had reason to be afraid. Michael showed up yet again to put her and her son through hell. This time, however, Strode flipped the script and, like a mama bear protecting her cub, transformed into the aggressor to administer what she hoped would be the final blow to Michael's reign of terror once and for all.
I never intended to be in another Halloween movie. And then 20 years later, 19 years later, I called John and Deborah and said, you know, the movie's going to be 20 years old next year, and we're all still in show business. And it seems kind of crazy. I don't think there's ever been a movie that was 20 years old where all of the people involved in the movie are in a way more famous now than they were then. It's usually the opposite. I said, so it seems like this is an opportunity to do something that's never been done. 20 years later? So what happened is John ended up not doing it, although he started to do it. Then Deborah ended up not doing it. And it was Kevin Williamson kind of came on to do it. So now we're the kind of like thing is heating up. And I had said to them from the beginning, so the idea is 20 years later, her life is a mess because she's been on the run her whole life, hiding from this potential threat, and obviously he comes back, but we create a scenario whereby she turns the table and says, you know what, fuck it. If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die clean, because the life I'm living now is no life. I am not alive in this life. When you're running and afraid your whole life, you have no life. And there was a real sort of deep message of facing fear and living in truth. And if you face the fear, you can live. If you don't face the fear, you're dead anyway. So with the end of the movie is that I end it. We're gonna end it here. And everybody was like, yeah, awesome. So the first script comes in, and the script is good, and it's dark, and blah, blah, blah. And then the last scene, you know, something happens, and, you know, a car goes off a cliff or something, and it's, you know, they've written it like, the flames reflect in her face and she knows it's over. I was like, no. Remember the scene we talked about where he gets pressed in between the Beverly Hills High School pool? This is a private school, she's the headmistress. They have that pool. And no, he's gonna fall into the crack, she's gonna shut the fucking pool on him and cut off his fucking head with an axe.
Although the ending did not turn out as described by Jamie Lee Curtis, Roger Ebert rated the movie as 2 stars, and it came in at 52% on the Rotten Tomatoes meter by critics. H2O earned a whopping $75 million theatrically to date, making it a striking success by industry standards and opening the door for additional installments of this beloved franchise. In fact, Halloween Resurrection hit the big screen in 2002.
There's a whole sort of new ballgame out there, and kids are picking up digital cameras, both still cameras and video cameras, and really creating their own worlds. So when I read the script, it seemed to me it had this sort of millennium sensibility to it, which was to mix digital video and film and create sort of an interchangeable new medium.
I don't think anything like this has ever been done before, as far as I can tell. I think audiences have seen video footage on film. They've seen the Blair Witch Project. They've seen reality television, where they're used to cameras being shaky and people talking candidly, but I don't think that anyone has ever put cameras on an actor's head and sent them inside.
Michael's here!
Despite Jamie Lee Curtis' protests regarding the release of yet another sequel, she ultimately decided to return as Laurie Strode under the condition that her character would be killed off early in the film. Filling out the cast of Halloween Resurrection were Busta Rhymes as Freddie Harris and Tyra Banks as Nora. In a nutshell, the film followed a reality show format with a group of teenagers braving it out in Michael Myers' childhood home. With no way to escape, the teenagers had to fight for survival when Myers unexpectedly returned and proceeded to do what he does best: dice and slice. Created with an estimated budget of $13 million, the movie was a box office disappointment, grossing under $38 million worldwide. Moreover, many fans and critics marked the endeavor as lacking worth. Curtis herself made remarks indicating displeasure, even calling the movie a joke. And John Carpenter took a few stabs at the film, stating it made him cringe.
Just like me anyway. I ain't paying you to be Michael Myers. I'm playing Michael Myers. If them kids come around and see us dressed up in the same shit, you're gonna ruin the whole effect. So you wanna be on Dangertainment? Let's see what you got.
The next installment in the Halloween franchise was not so much a sequel as a remake, written and directed by Rob Zombie. Like the original, Michael was shown as having been institutionalized after violently murdering his sister. Having spent years of his life locked away, Michael waited for the right moment to escape, then he made his way home, where he terrorized the residents of Haddonfield. Laurie Strode served as Michael's primary target, while Dr. Loomis, now played by Malcolm McDowell, relentlessly pursued his patient to put a stop to the evil. Zombie's version offers something the original did not: a glimpse into why Michael became a killer.
Well, at one point I had this idea that was a big commitment that nobody really wanted to do. Is I thought that there's really 2 movies I could have made. young Michael leading up to him returning to Haddonfield in part 1, and then pick up part 2. But yeah, no, it wasn't really till after the fact that really I thought that, you know, before you make the movie, you don't know. You know, I didn't know, would that be a compelling movie to watch young Michael for the whole movie? But when I was done, I was like, geez, man, it was. I found that, you know, Dag as young Michael Myers totally compelling, and that easily could have been a whole movie in itself.
With a less than desirable home life, Michael was depicted as a victim, commonly bullied at school. Michael sought relief by hiding behind a mask and releasing his rage through the torture and abuse of animals, the latter being one of the McDonald triad predictors for serial killers. Of course, Michael Myers went on to add the murder of humans to his cathartic endeavors, and the story gained ground from there. Released in 2007, the theatrical version of Halloween ran for 1 hour and 49 minutes and was created on an estimated budget of $15 million. The film grossed over $80 million worldwide, but sparked debate among the fans of the franchise, with some finding Zombie's version a fresh new take on the original idea, while others criticized the alterations and choices.
Well, I would say nice things about him, but you know, we did this, I thought it was going to be a real cool deal for the History Channel, the Biography Channel, whatever that is. They were going to do about Halloween. I thought, ooh, that's pretty cool. Until I noticed that they did one on Caddyshack. And I thought, wow, what is this? Anyway, they interviewed him on that biography channel, and he lied about me. He said I was very cold to him when he told me I was going to, and that he was going to make it. Nothing could be further from the truth. I said, make it your own movie, man. You know, this is yours now. Don't worry about me. I was incredibly supportive. Why that piece of shit lied, I don't know. He had no reason to. Why did he do it? So, frankly, that will color my response to the film. If I take that away, I did not. I thought that he took away the mystique of the story by explaining too much about the guy. I don't care about that. It's supposed to be a force of nature. He's supposed to be almost supernatural. Knowing about that and he was too big.
Yeah.
It wasn't normal.
A second version, the director's cut, made available through home video, caused a stir on account of a graphic rape scene, which took place directly before Michael Myers escaped the asylum and returned home to Haddonfield. In the scene, 2 guards raped a female patient, not only in front of Michael, but in his very room, setting into motion the violence that followed. Despite criticisms, director Rob Zombie returned for the sequel Halloween 2, released in 2009. Having tracked his sister down at the hospital, Myers attempted once more to rid the world of his family line. Or so he thought before realizing that the entire 11-minute hospital sequence was nothing but a dream. With an estimated budget of $15 million, the film did poorly, earning under $39.5 million gross worldwide. While Halloween 2 initially excited Zombie because it allowed him to share his vision for the film using 16mm camera negative and a storyline that transitioned the movie out of the realm of a remake, its reception proved polarizing, with heavy criticisms on one side and a cult following on the other. According to Zombie, he faced major issues with the studio meddling relentlessly with his films, thereby impacting the result.
Is that something that's a difficult thing to manage, or do you not have to deal with that anymore?
I had to deal with that a lot when I made the 2 Halloween movies for Weinstein
of course,
Company.
Because they're this gigantic franchise.
Well, there was weird meddling. It was just like kind of psychotic meddling.
How so?
Just weird, like my phone was ringing all the time when I'm on set working, and it'd be like, we think it should be this. I'm like, well,
while you're working?
Yeah, well, if I did that, then everything we shot doesn't match. And it makes no sense. It's just like
they're doing coke and just coming up with ideas.
I don't know. It's just weird thoughts all the time. But I mean, a lot of times, I don't want to like name all these names of people, but I remember working on one movie that never happened, and whatever was the #1 movie from that weekend was exactly the notes I would get for what we were working on. It didn't, and I swear to God, because it was around the time of Private Parts, and Private Parts was #1. I go, I guarantee you when I walk into the office, they're going to say, can we get Howard Stern in this movie? And they did.
No!
Yes, it didn't matter what it was. If it was Starship Troopers, they go, can we get giant bugs in this movie suddenly? It wasn't the Halloween movies. It was another movie that never actually happened. And you're just like, this is insanity.
The uncreative executive that wants to be creative is a classic story in Hollywood. I mean, that's really like a villain in a film about a movie, about a guy trying to make a movie.
Like its predecessor, the director's cut of the film created controversy. as Zombie decided to give voice to the notoriously mute villain. Intended as Zombie's original ending, Michael screamed a single word directly before plunging a knife into Dr. Loomis's stomach.
Michael, for God in heaven, die!
With Halloween 2 ending Zombie's reign as Halloween director, the next in the line of installments was not released until 2018, 40 years after the original. Jamie Lee Curtis returned as Laurie Strode and John Carpenter as the executive producer. The film was written by Jeff Fradley, David Gordon Green, and Danny McBride, the latter of whom well known for his comedic roles in Hot Rod, Pineapple Express, Tropic Thunder, This Is the End, and Eastbound and Down. When asked about Halloween, McBride stated, "There's more to life than dick and fart jokes." Filling out the rest of the cast were Nick Castle and James Jude Courtney as Michael Myers, as known as The Shape, Judy Greer as Strode's estranged daughter Karen, and newcomer Andy Matichak, who gained the role over Scream Queens star Emma Roberts as Strode's granddaughter Allison. Dr. Sartain was played by Halleck Bilginer, and Will Patton played Officer Hawkins. In Halloween 2018, previous storylines were abandoned in favor of the original 1978 version, thereby breaking the familial tie that bound Michael Myers to Laurie Strode. In an interview with Clerks and Dogma director Kevin Smith, Jamie Lee Curtis explained the reason for the decision.
Added to the mythology, and that was a word that didn't exist when these movies were
Right,
happening.
of course.
But suddenly they were like, Laurie is connected to Michael.
No, Michael and she are not connected at all.
At all
You know
anymore.
why? Because there's nothing more terrifying than something random.
Yes.
You see, random acts of violence is what terrorism really is.
Yes.
And she was the ultimate soft target. It was a random attack, and for some reason he chose her. And that is the unexplainable, terrifying reality of her life, and why that movie, I think, resonated so deeply with people.
He's waited for this night. He's waited for me. I've waited for him.
This movie is a direct link to only one.
The film presented Strode as a recluse with deep emotional scars who overzealously prepared for Michael's return and damaged relationships with those in her life in the process. Created on an estimated budget of $10 million, the movie raked in over $255 million worldwide and received multiple awards and nominations, making it a massive success in a competitive industry.
He's waited for this night. He's waited for me. I've waited for him.
Get out of the room! Get inside!
In 2021, the saga continued with Halloween Kills. Beloved 80s film star Anthony Michael Hall served as the newest addition to the list of cast members, along with Kyle Richards. Hall took on the original throwback role of Tommy Doyle, while Richards reprised her role as Lindsay Wallace after over 40 years. The film picked up right where the previous film ended, after Strode, her daughter, and her granddaughter trapped Michael beneath the kitchen of Laurie Strode's house and set the monster on fire. Unfortunately for the ladies, however, Michael once again found a way to survive and continue his reign of terror, sparking residents of the once sleepy town of Haddonfield to rise up for vigilante justice. Thus, Halloween Kills extended its reach from fear and violence to the dangers of mob mentality.
This is a very different movie.
It's called Halloween Kills, and it has to live up to that title. It's a bigger, badder, nastier, crazier version.
40 years ago, a madman escaped from a mental hospital. The boogeyman is coming for you.
This evening, 4 bodies were discovered.
The last movie was Laurie's story. This is the town's story.
Laurie, what do we do?
We fight.
One of the most talked about scenes in the movie occurred towards the end when Laurie Strode's daughter Karen Nelson ripped the mask off of Michael's head, causing him to follow her and utter the line, "Give it back." Michael's words were delivered so softly that arguments arose among viewers whether or not they were ever spoken at all. Another highly debated and divisive part of the movie involved the townspeople targeting the wrong man for Michael Myers' crimes. Critic Brian Tellerico described this storyline as unrefined commentary on mob justice. And he wasn't the only audience member with negative things to say about Halloween Kills for this reason. The film received mixed reviews, with 38% from critics and 66% from audience members on the Rotten Tomatoes meter. Released on October 14, 2022, Halloween Ends portrays Laurie Strode 4 years after the events of Halloween Kills. Having liberated herself from the fear and anger caused by encounters with Michael Myers, Strode takes up a career as a writer and lives with her granddaughter Allison. All is not happily ever after, however, as the masked murderer once again makes his bloody return. Similar to Season of the Witch, Halloween Ends strayed from the highly anticipated Laurie vs. Michael showdown storyline to present the emergence of evil in the form of newcomer Rowan Campbell as Corey Cunningham, the down-on-his-luck love interest of Laurie Strode's granddaughter Allison. Picking up 4 years after Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends portrays Laurie Strode as a survivor liberated from the fear and anger that had once consumed her. Despite the fact that Michael's whereabouts have remained unknown since their last encounter, Laurie lives in a more peaceful existence with her granddaughter Allison and is in the process of writing a memoir detailing her experiences. Meanwhile, the town of Haddonfield had not yet fully recovered from the violence and bloodshed left in Michael's wake, and Corey Cunningham struggles to overcome a mistake that has cast him into the role of town pariah and sent him plunging into the darkness in which Michael Myers resides.
Hello.
Though the actions of Corey draw Michael from his hiding place and lead him to Laurie Strode, critics and fans have faulted the film's lack of urgency with regard to the final showdown between these iconic characters, and some have even gone so far as to petition for a reshoot. David Gordon Green never intended for Halloween Ends to be a showdown film. Rather, his intent was to create a love story infusing elements from such classics as Christine and The Lost Boys.
In terms of the 80s influence, there's a lot of it. I think most of the movies I was pointing to, a lot of it's just self-indulgent because these are the types of movies that inspired me to get to make horror movies in the first place, is watching movies like Christine and Blood Rage and Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker, and these films that in a fun way were the forbidden VHS videos that I, sneak watching at a sleepover party or something like that. And so I think it was exciting for me to make a movie about bad boys in leather jackets and motorcycles and bullies and all these things that affected my film viewing as a kid. And even like, I was watching it the other day thinking, I think we even snuck a little Twin Peaks in there, Some Lost Boys. Some Lost Boys, for sure.
The 2 years since the release of Halloween Ends have left a trail of franchise blood on the floor, especially considering this was the closing chapter to the latest timeline. The two main reasons for this disdain were the treatment of the beloved horror icon and the introduction of the troubled copycat killer Corey, possibly too late in the story. On the flip side, there are others who have applauded the change in direction, offering something new and fresh to the franchise, much like earlier films such as Season of the Witch. Although there are some that have come around to the divisive film, potentially finding more meaning beneath the surface, the future remains to be seen whether it will become a cult classic or eternally hated. The movie holds a 40% critic score and 57% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, confirming its divisive nature. Whether you love, hate, or are altogether ambivalent about the trilogy's finale, one thing is for certain: the Halloween franchise, along with Michael Myers' dicing, slicing, and rampages, have stood the test of time. So the question now becomes, is Halloween and Michael Myers truly at an end? Or will evil take on a new shape in the future?